On October 27th, 2021, I call this meeting the Historic Landmark Board of the City of Westminster to order. Could we have a roll call?
Gargi Gupta.
Here.
Linda Grabeel.
Here.
Karen Hardy.
Here.
Sarah Lorak.
Here.
Mary Oswell.
Here.
Tennille Wood.
Here.
Anna Lesky Young.
Here.
And Alana Mays.
Here.
All present and accounted for.
Excellent. I'm hoping other people have a chance to read the minutes. Did we see anything in the minutes that looked in need of correction? Incomplete? If nobody has any objections, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the last meeting.
I move that we accept the minutes from the July 28th, 2021 meeting.
Somebody second?
I second.
Is this a voice vote, Rich? I can never remember.
We can do it by show of hands. It's probably just as fine.
Does everybody accept? All those in favor of accepting the minutes of the meeting?
And let the record show that that is a unanimous vote to accept the minutes as recorded.
Okie dokie. One main agenda item. We are there.
So yeah, the main thrust of today's meeting is really to follow up on what we had started to discuss at the last meeting, which is how we are going to finally achieve that awareness campaign that we were so interested in doing. And we have support now, a partnership with the Westminster Historical Society to begin planning a series of bus tours next summer. And if you'll look on the agenda, we do have some dates that we are tentatively holding for that. Those dates are going to be on the second Saturdays of the month in the summer months. And we're doing that because I'm sure most of you are aware, or if not all of you, that we have a gallery walk that takes place the second Saturday in historic Westminster Art District. And so we're just trying to create some synergy and give people an entire day outing if they so choose. So we can do the tours, and if you wish to tour the galleries even before or after, great. We can make a day of it in the Westminster. So we are excited to begin working on that. We did have some people that had volunteered to kind of form a little work group on developing those tours. And I'm just looking at my notes here. Those were Tennille Wood, Linda Grabeel, representing the Historic Landmark Board. And Sarah, you were going to volunteer to support the development of any digital elements for the tour, any design publications, whether it's a script, brochures, etc., anything they're going to take with them. And I'm certainly happy to help facilitate those meetings, or you can certainly meet separately by yourselves once you actually start moving forward with developing that. But I would like to, of course, reach out to our partners. And Linda, is that something you could help facilitate in terms of making sure that we have a chance to visit a board meeting once we have kind of, worked collectively on this?
Oh, by all means, yes.
So that being said, whose microphone is giving us some feedback, but if everybody could please silence your microphones unless you're speaking, that would be helpful. So we need to kind of hone in on exactly what we are trying to accomplish, and so that at least as a team, we are on the same page. And Linda, I'm not really sure if you're going to represent the board or the Historical Society or both, but I would certainly love to have more members of the Historical Board as part of that work group as well. Do you want to just let us know who will be representing on that work group from the board?
Yes, I would be happy to do that too.
When is your next board meeting, may I ask?
Just a second. Let me look. It's in November. Okay, our next board meeting is November 15th.
Okay. So I would like to just propose, if this is okay, Mary, that we have a discussion internally where we are really making sure we're clear on what we are going to include on this tour in terms of a target length, this and that, and then we'll take that information with the work group to engage with the Historical Society to make sure that we have good synergy there and agreement, and they may have some other great ideas on how to, we don't need to determine everything today, but I did want to make sure that we are all on the same page in terms of, achieving that awareness that we've so long planned to undertake. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, did I send to the work group the notes I had from our previous tour? I seem to remember emailing that, but maybe I'm imagining things. Can anybody confirm or deny?
I did not get it.
Okay. So,
I was going to say, the one thing I would recommend too is the guys who work at the History Center are not board members, but they are very interested as well. So I want to make, that I think it's important that this is one of the books that they have discussed, which gives us a little bit of, it's called Bad Days in Colorado, and it's sort of historic, untold, some of which are slightly unsavory stories, but that's a little bit of that is good. But yeah, I want to make sure that the question I would have to that end is, if we are going to second Saturdays, your intention to say use the parking lot at the History Center as the stop on begin and end point, since we will have essentially an empty parking lot there on the weekdays, since the schools are not involved in that building?
I mean, we certainly can. I think it's centrally located. I don't have an issue with that.
No, I think if we're going to go forward on this idea of where we're going to start and stop.
We're going to start by their cars, but we're going to park and end like 10 miles from the car.
Well, that's the thing is,
it's meant to simulate like the trauma of going by covered wagon. We want them to be just completely exhausted and defeated.
Well, among other things, that parking lot is usually empty weekends, because it is the other thing that the History Center is used for is the school. Also, with a little bit of coordination, we can get the History Center open on that day as well, which would add some more history content to that time frame, especially if we encourage them to walk around the Arts District anyhow.
Well, I would propose that possibly because we also had talked about doing a Bowls tour as part of this, and I don't want to get overly ambitious, but it could be that we start at one and end at the other, and they're not close, but they're certainly close by my standards. I walk a lot, but.
And the only thing I would say is there's more parking at the History Center, so if they want you to park there, makes more sense. The Bowls House just does not have as much parking. But yeah.
It could be that the Bowls House is just a stop on the tour, and we can do like a quick inside, and then you're still going to wind up back at the cars. I mean, that's certainly a possibility as well.
May I speak real quickly? Sometimes on some Saturdays, the parking lot is full because of, I forget which group meets that gives out food and things like that. So that happens. And then as far as parking at the Bowls House, the you park a Stan's lot, which is now owned by some other people, they would clear the roadway parking for us. Have a set time. Really good relationship with them as well. So it's good to coordinate. I forget what the group is. There on some Saturdays, but I'm telling you, we couldn't even get in for our meetings sometimes.
The other option is we do have the MAC, and that's not terribly far, and there's a rather large parking area around the MAC, so we could certainly, I mean, the bus is not like a Greyhound coach. We can't fit like 40 some people on it. I think it's much smaller than that. I don't know the exact capacity. I want to say it's maybe 20, but I'll have to figure that out. But some of you were on the tour that we took, I believe, and so it would be that same vehicle that we did a couple years ago. I'm not sure. Is that your microphone, Linda, that's kind of squawking at us?
No, I have mine off. I just turned it back on.
Can anybody tell?
Rich, can you see if we're muted or not?
All right. I think that was it. Sorry, everybody. That was making me crazy. Okay, so we do need to figure out the parking, and we do have some options here. It's good to know those options. I would propose that we start with, as a document for those working on this, it's obviously going to require an additional meeting for this work group, and I will make sure I send those notes. I thought I did, but who knows? But basically, it's going to be the same tour that we gave as a board, because we went to see all of the landmarks, and it's a fairly long tour because there are quite a few of them, and they're not all, of course, close together. You get out to the mushroom farms, etc. It's a little bit of a hike, so we might wish to, cut it down so that we're maximizing everybody's experience in as tight a footprint as possible. There's no reason that we have to do every single site, but just give a healthy appreciation for the rich history of the sites and try to include a variety. So that would be my personal recommendation, but I defer to the board, of course. And we need to discuss if we want to do the same tour all 4 times, if we want to do a different theme every time, and that way people can be repeat customers. If we have true history buffs that want to go to all 4, they can certainly do so. So that's another option I throw out for discussion. And lastly, we would need to talk about how we are going to handle staffing it and training, because I would certainly encourage as many of you to participate as possible. And that also includes our friends at the Historical Society. So we would probably make sure we had a script and a quick training session so everybody was giving the same experience at the same high standards. So that's all I am going to say. And now I just turn it back to you, Mary, to lead some healthy discussion.
Gee, thanks for putting me on the spot. I agree with, I don't think we can do everything. I would say the first thing we have to decide is what we think is a reasonable period of time to keep people on the bus. And then from there we can hit these 8, or we can hit these 7, or whatever. And because the point is to, if anything, say, well, next month our tour is going to be blah, blah. So I'm interested in other people's thoughts, but I think the best way to go about it is to start by saying, well, what's reasonable to put in, especially if we let people get out in certain places. Just the getting off and then getting back on is a time-consuming thing. And yet, if we go to the Semper Allison farm, there's a place where people can get out, as opposed to, there's also things along the way that we can say, well, and now we're passing the church well. There isn't really a lot to see at the well. So I open that up to you guys. What, how do you think you want to handle that? And what do you think is reasonable what's a reasonable amount of time? And from there.
Is there so we'll need restrooms at some point along that tour if it's more than an hour. And I'm not sure, I think there's actually a legal thing to that. I'm not sure what that looks like, but we'll have to, if there aren't restrooms, it'll have to be relatively short. If there are, I think 3 hours is traditional as far as what a bus tour can offer as far as length. So you can do like an hour and a half and then you do another hour and a half with that middle break. But I don't know if there are good centrally located restrooms that are accessible for the public. Is that?
It gives another incentive to have a starting point where people can make sure they use the restroom before boarding the bus. So that I think we have that covered at the MAC. We would have that covered at the History Center, and we would have it at the Bowes House. So either of those would be options. Certainly, the MAC has the greatest capacity for any number of people, so we don't get caught up on that. But that's a very good point, Alana. Thanks for pointing that out.
Well, in terms of time, I am of the opinion if it gets to the point where I don't think we can at this point say we're History Colorado and we keep people out for 3 hours. I think we're expanding beyond our own capacity to entertain them, for one thing. So I would be of the opinion that we're trying to get maybe an hour, and if it is, we do it twice. Maybe we do it at 11 and 2 or something, because we get enough demand. I'd rather do that and then be able to say, this series is going to continue if you come back next month or in 2 months. The second half of the summer, we're going to do different tours. To me, I'd rather leave them wanting more than have them out for too long. Does that?
I agree.
Nodding heads. So, in which case, then I kind of think that a little bit of figuring out what are maybe in an hour the top 8 things that we can go to or go by in a reasonable kind of a path. We don't
Can
have.
I suggest something really quick? And I do have a question. Are we 100% certain that it has to be a bus tour? I'm just thinking about, I did a mid-century home tour. It's been like 2 years ago. But basically, it was self-guided. So you drove yourself, but it was between the certain number of hours, and you would have representatives at each one of those locations. So for example, you would say the tour was between noon and 3 on a particular day. And then everyone would come to a specific spot and then get a map of where to go. And then you would have different people. I mean, this was partly because they were personal residences. And so then you would drive there and it would basically be like an open house at that location. It was really nice because then you could kind of take it at your own pace and stop wherever you wanted to. If the bus thing is kind of like part of the charm of it, then I completely understand. I just wanted to throw that out there before we continued on this road.
I can say that there has been some interest in doing a walking tour that could be in conjunction with this, but it really is part of the charm from my perspective, kind of making it an event instead of just kind of, I don't want to work that hard if I have to follow a map and read it I want someone to tell me the story and imbue it with personality. That's just my take. I'm an event planner. I can't help it.
Totally understand. I just wanted to give you that, just let you know that this was an option that I saw that was well facilitated.
Yeah, and I mean, it's certainly open for discussion. I'd be curious to know what everybody else thinks.
We did something like that a number of years ago. I don't know, Linda, if you were on the board then or not, but some of us were stationed at, and I don't know at how many sites. We had fewer of them then, and during certain hours, and then people would come. and we would kind of interpret the sites and answer their questions and such. But I don't remember much in the way of details about where all those were. And also,
I don't think I was on that tour, but I agree with Rich. I went on the last tour with Rich and the group. And the beauty is the bus tour, there's somebody with like a microphone talking us through things, even on the sites where we're not going to park and stop and get out. And that's always interesting because you hear the stories firsthand. Things that are not written down and be too wordy to write down are easy to explain verbally in front of the people.
I think too, and perhaps this is something we could sort of keep in our back pocket depending on how comfortable people are getting in a crowded bus during COVID. I think that was another appeal of it, was that, you could be in a car with whomever you chose. And then, but I agree. I love tours. It's just, considering everything, it might be nice to just have that kind of as an option.
And that very good.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to say, it might be nice if we do a bus tour, if there were like some refreshments or like, wine or something at each of the locations. I don't know if we have budget, or just like little hors d'oeuvres or something. It could be a nice touch.
We could drink from the fire state.
I know there's certain sites that we cannot have liquor at. I know the Bowles House is one of them. And I think the History Center as well. So I can just speak for those two.
I think that would be a little problematic from a licensing standpoint. I love the idea and I hope that we can get there someday, but that's probably a little ambitious for this. But I'm all about refreshments, just of the non-alcoholic variety.
Well, and
even if it's free, like even if it's just like during the art walks, do the different galleries have like refreshments and wine and things like that?
Yeah.
That's hosted. Is that hosted by the city?
That's hosted by the individual galleries.
Okay.
So they would have certainly more liberties than we do. But I want to just point out before we get too far down, I know we want to keep this to a limit, but I think we'd be missing a real opportunity if we didn't take advantage of the second Saturday aspect of it. So Anna, what I'm thinking is it'd be great to have a hybrid version of what you're talking about and the bus tour. And we're at one end, we stop, drop them off, give them a map with numbers or whatever's on the street, and they proceed down the entire street, and we pick them up on the other end and take them back to the tour. And then so there's some of it's guided at your own pace. Yeah. Look at the art, do that kind of thing, and visit businesses, that sort of thing.
Well, the other side of that is that we, depending on where we want to do this, we can drop them at one end of the arts district. And then their cars are at the, if we drop them at the east side of 73rd, they can walk back down past some of those historic places where there isn't maybe anything they can go into, or, it depends on the day. I mean, maybe Gary has the Grange open for people, those kind of things. If we're going to do that, then they get a little bit of that. And even if you don't get on the bus, you're still, if you're in the area, you're going to get a chance to get a little history, whether you signed up or not. And if we can work it that way, I think that would be, use the bus to take people to the stuff that's farther, and then say, unless you really need to get back to your car specifically, you will be dropped at, 73rd and whatever, which will allow you to then walk past the rodeo market, the Grange, those kind of things. Yes?
I had a couple of thoughts on all of this. One was what Anna brought up regarding COVID. We all keep saying it's going to disappear some point in life, right? So should we head into the summer of 2022 and we are in the same limbo situation, we may need to look at that as a backup plan, only because there might be less interest in people getting together on a bus with strangers. I certainly know that's a big, big concern for a lot of people that I am encountering. So that might be something good. The second thing that I was thinking of is the beauty of what Anna was suggesting is if we actually do that kind of tour, there might be benefit to actually designating who of the historic landmark board will be at which site, so that you can give them that spiel and it doesn't feel like you're left on your own. I could do that on any Saturday. Why this Saturday, right? To make it an event, some of that's the beauty if you want to combine it. So that was another thought I had. And then hearing the 1 hour timeline, we might want to also look at if we want to do this. There are 4 Saturdays we're looking at. Should these be 4 different tours? Because then you can pick and choose how you want to arrange them. So, we won't have thousands of people. This is a small community. So you might have a lot of repeat customers. And if you really want that to be successful every single Saturday, all those 4 Saturdays, I think having something different might be a good mix. Just some thoughts I'm thinking with an hour to get them through stuff.
And for the good of the discussion, I think this is great that we're bringing all this up, because really it's going to be up to the work task force to take all of this, evaluate it, and kind of make the recommendations that we go to. And then, of course, we're still going to have to, we want to make sure that we're giving opportunities for our partners to have some input as well. So this is really great. And again, I don't know that we need to come to consensus on any of this. We're just sharing ideas, and we'll have to work to synthesize a good plan that includes all of the reasonable elements we're discussing today.
Well, and some of the locations that are on our list of landmarked places are not normally open to the public. Metzger Farm is the one that comes to mind. So the idea of having the farm open and allowing people inside the fence as part of our event, it might be a thing that would bring people, because lots of people walk the outside, but you can't get inside. You can't see. There's even brand new signage that's inside the fences at Metzger Farm. So, and the farm itself has got a lot of interesting history. So some of that stuff, I think, any of those little things we can add to the changing nature of the 4 different Saturday. So this is the Saturday that you're going to get to go into the Metzger Farm space. This is the Saturday that we've set aside so you can get into the Schoenberg Farm Barn, which is beautiful. This, so that we give them something on those particular days that they can't get some other day. And it's up to the committee to decide, for what those 4 things might be that we can give them access to that they normally can't have access to. Those are the 2 that came to mind for me. So
I think that's a fantastic idea. I love that. That definitely would drive interest. I'm sure Linda remembers when we did that for the Westminster University tour. We had a few people show up.
You mean the one where half the world was there? Yeah, and I'm still working on, we've got a new lawyer at Pillar of Fire. They're not letting anybody tour the castle. And because, and I've worked up a whole waiver that they can use. Nobody's jumped on it. They're just so afraid that someone's going to fall down those stairs. So I haven't stopped working, but I'm not getting an audience of acceptance. But, we could still go there and go around the outside. There's a lot of interesting architectural features and historical features outside that most people don't see, including, did you know there's a pineapple on the outside of the castle? Probably most people don't notice that. And so there's things that are kind of hidden secrets about each site, even if we don't get to go in. There's been even the Harris House, the people that own that are open to having tours there, which is something the public cannot do. So there's some private residences that are also open. or a possibility if we work it out right.
Well, and I think that's the kind of thing to lay at the feet of the working group and say, you find the 4 things that we can highlight on those 4 separate weekends, and then we build the tour, the little bits of the rest of the tour around them. And I mean, I don't know what the procedures for getting the gates open at the Metzger farm, but I know the city of Westminster is part of that facility, and I'd love to see it used more. And I know COVID brought the end to a bunch of stuff that we hope will come back, but there's a lot of history at Metzger. There's a lot of history at the Allison farm, the Schoenberg. For those of you who didn't get inside Schoenberg's barn when we did the Land of Milk and Honey, just the building itself and the restoration of it is fabulous. It gives you a real sense of that space from that era. So yeah, I think there are other things that are not landmarked along the way to these places that can be filler. They're easy filler. So yeah, it feels to me like the idea is we're going to try to do 4 of these little hour bus tours, with the understanding that we will then hopefully end them so that people participate in Second Saturday to get that chance to sort of walk down 73rd and see those kind of things. And the working group gets to, roll up their sleeves and figure out what's the best route and where are we going to go and what we're going to highlight. And then we have to consider what Anna was talking about, the sort of backup, and Gargi about what's the backup if we have to do this a different way. But I'd like to be able to say we're going to look forward to doing this itself, and not get paralysis because of, I am right now under a COVID precaution because my husband was exposed at work. So I know what that feels like, but I also know that I really want to hope for a better outcome than, and last summer wasn't too bad, as summers went. So, but yeah, do the working folk, do you guys in the group feel like you have enough to start with input from the Historical Society, start your sort of planning toward that? I see some nods. I see some blank looks.
Yes. I was just going to say, if we have to have a backup plan for the individual walking tour, I wonder if we should also think about an audio walking tour, or if people want to do it at their own time. They could just kind of download the scripted audio and just play it, and it could take them to each location. But certain things wouldn't be open like they would be all the way, so you would just have to think about that. But
well, and one of my hopes is that the information we put together for these individual bus tours is something that can eventually be in written and electronic form that people can get on their own. Because I would love it if we could have some kind of paper to hand people. I know it's an electronic age, but people still, even younger people, sometimes revert to paper but it'd be nice if we could when we get done with this, take these various things and say, look, if you want to smack through all of Westminster history, here are the 28 spots we went and their information. You too, except you can't get in some of the special places. Which, it's not an uncommon thing. I've had this, you go somewhere and they're like, well, here's a walking tour that we do, but nobody's here to lead it. You just go do it yourself. And, I've had that happen at national parks where they're like, we don't have a guide for you today, but here's the written information, go.
Well, what we'll do is we'll give them a written test at the end of the tour. And if they get a perfect score, they get a booby prize to take home. And if they don't, they get shamed and thrown off the bus.
Well, and I do too. I think it was Alana's point. The History Center being an actual place, if we want to offer light refreshments of a non-alcoholic variety, because there's an inside space there, that is a possibility too. And maybe with a little bit of asking nicely, some of our local businesses would cooperate by giving us things that don't have to be kept frozen, but water and things like that to offer to our guests too. So.
Well, I think we should really just encourage people to support these businesses and frankly consume their refreshments inside things like the gallery, so that they are, we're encouraging them to the greatest extent possible to really experience our businesses down there. So absolutely.
So do any of the art galleries or places like a Creative Corner have copies of the existing walking tour books, for the houses and such?
We do, the Westminster Historical Society.
So that would
Some of
be a
the other
nice tie-in.
One.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we have plenty of the walking tour books in 3 different venues, 3 different, 2 avenues and a street or series of streets.
And just because we put in a little free library not long ago, I've been tucking them into my little free library for people to take. So if any of you have a little free library in your vicinity, the Historic Society has more of those tours if you'd like to, sort of fairy dust sprinkle them around. I just said, so. But yeah, okay. So do we feel are we at a good point to let the committee go do some work and come back to us in January with fabulous ideas? Okay. And the one thing that's on here is times to be determined. Is that based on when the galleries and things are open as well?
Yeah, I think we'll try to be very strategic in what makes sense, the best time of day to do that. I've already, just reserved the blocks of time and yeah, we have time to decide exactly when's best to start. And it doesn't always have to be the same time, although I think it probably should be, just for consistency's sake.
Okay. All right. I don't know if this is old business or new business, so I'm going to stick it in here. I went through this list from the trip we took a couple summers ago. And then because of that, I went online to the city's, the list of the historic landmarks that's on the city's website. And I will reiterate the fact that the map is lovely, but I think there should be an actual list there too. But the other side of that is there are a couple of places on that list that are not historic landmarks by our city. In fact, there's one that burned down a year ago. So I would like to make sure that we get our page on the city site updated and correct. So that's number one. And I'm not sure, I don't want to lay it on Rich because I'm not sure that it is his responsibility to have it be up on the website correctly. But I'd like to see that get fixed.
Mary, that could very easily just be you and I spending some time just one-on-one and cleaning that up. I am aware that there are some things that were aspirational, and that's why they were included, but they are in fact not designated landmarks, and that is known. We just haven't tackled it. But I am more than happy to work just one-on-one with you, and if anybody else catches something once we've had a good hard pass through it, we can continue to make sure it's up to date.
And the other thing is related to that, and it is a thing that I wasn't around long enough ago. Well, there are two things and they're kind of related. The first thing is I have never come across landmarks like we as the city board do that don't have numbers. Usually your historic landmark number X of the city of whatever. And I know it sounds kind of like a silly little thing, but to me, I think it would help us keep track if we actually knew we are on historic landmark number 25 and the next one will be 26. And usually it's a chronologic thing, so it's not, I don't know. And I'm not sure it has to be something that we put on them externally, like we put it on the sign. But I think for our own cataloging and inventory purposes, I think it's something that should be considered. And it would be, the way I look at it, it would be strictly chronology. We go back to whatever was landmarked first, and we work our way to where we are now. And then, among other things, I will always be able to say, oh, we have 25 historically landmarked sites. Now I don't know, because every time I count them, I get a different number. So I'm looking for input from the rest of you as well. Alana, or Anna.
Coming from a museum background, that makes absolute sense, and it's how you keep track of your collections. And even if I mean, they're essentially our collections, and so having, yeah, that makes absolute sense to me, even if it's just for recording purposes and like just to kind of do it by the books.
Anybody else?
I would just add that we
Oh,
do know chronology, so we have dates for all of them, and that's not terribly difficult, so we can do that.
I think it might be nice, because then, among other things, when we have them, we can keep track of them by number too. The other part of that, and this is because I haven't been around since the very beginning, and so I don't know everything. I hate to say it, even though I sometimes sound like I think I do. So I, for the longest time, did not realize that the Marion Barn and Windmill had been historic landmarked. Even after I got on the committee, I didn't realize that, or on the board. And it wasn't too long ago that I realized, because I was writing about the Marion family for the Westminster Historical Society. The barn and the windmill are historic, but they've been moved, which it doesn't mean we can't landmark them. We did. But this takes me back to, I don't always know what the criteria, let me step that back. I would like it if there was some way for us to know when someone comes on the committee, we can hand them and say, these are our historic landmarks. They start with number 1. And with them, we tell you why they were landmarked by the board and what that means. We've had this discussion about the radio. It was landmarked because of the roof and the front. If I'm not mistaken, right, Gargi? Well, I think it would be important for us, just as members of the board, to know, like, I know from a historic perspective, moving things often removes their historic value. So I know we saved the barn and the windmill, and the only way we could save them was to move them. Well, I would like somewhere, I think it would be wise for us to have that written in, for the same reason that Anna said about numbering things. If I call up something in a museum that the museum is part of the collections, it's going to give me some reason why we have it. If it doesn't look like it's part of our normal collection for some reason, in there it's going to say, yes, but this was owned by so-and-so who was really special. And I like that for the things we landmark too. If we could, if it, not asking
and
for,
it would help moving forward, help people maybe, I mean, we're not setting it down as law, but as like precedent for helping the landmark board make future decisions about, you know, whether something should be included or not.
I just want to kind of repeat some things that Mary said. From what I'm understanding, what we are talking about doing, because obviously all the applications, as you know, do have the note of what the historical significance is. Sometimes it's interior, sometimes it's exterior, sometimes it's a combination of it, and sometimes it's just the landscaping. So the applications which we will use to number them chronologically might be where we'll get this information, because we want to highlight this historical significance, because those are the items that people can't be messing around with when they make renovations. And that's what we have to check back with, talking, for example, the rodeo marketplace. Our purview is only limited to things which are of historic significance, and we cannot mandate that they do other things anyway.
So if I can offer just a comment real quick. We started a couple of years ago giving every board member a binder that has your bylaws in it, it has the city code, et cetera. And that would be, and we typically included that list kind of that gave you a running tally of restorations and work that has taken place at each of those properties. I think if we have a subgroup that's willing to work on this, there's no reason why they couldn't produce the accompanying pieces that you're asking for, and to have that in those binders so that it's always ready. But I will add that that is the staff liaison's responsibility. Anytime that there is an application made that requires a certificate of historical appropriateness, you can rest assured that you would not go into that meeting not knowing what is being discussed and all the background up to that point, because if we're not giving you that is a failure on our part. And I can assure you that as long as I'm here, you're going to have that information before we begin any kind of discussions, and you'll have it well in advance.
Well, and that's, I promise I get to you, Karen. That's great, but the thing is, I don't have a binder full of those applications. I can find applications for other historic landmark things online. I can pull out, this is why it's so important. But I don't have that at my fingertips because it happened a decade ago or 15 years ago. And Karen wanted to make a comment. So,
Karen.
Well, I know the landmark applications should clearly state what the significant characteristics are. You know, is it for the architecture, the history, the site, whatever, and certainly that's going to be valuable information to our committee in putting together, why people should think this is an important thing we're showing them. So we should be able to come up with a summary statement in one sentence or so. This is why this property has been landmarked.
So, and I'm perfectly happy to appoint myself to have to be part of that since I wanted it. And I do think will go fairly quickly. So,
do we have any other volunteers that would like to work with Mary on pulling that together for the binders and or expanded distribution?
Is this also going to be like a digital binder?
It currently is not. No. These are
I
assembled.
was just thinking that may be the problem, is that there's been lots of paper binders like over the last 10 years, and then people can't really keep track of what's what.
But this is your ultra important historic landmark binder.
Well, and I do think the other side of that is if we come up with a list of numbered and justified things for each of these sites, it's a very easy thing to have be connected to our webpage through the city.
Mm-hmm.
Number one is the Bowles House, and it's historically significant because all of that in maybe 30 to 35 words per item is the kind of thing that can be anywhere. It can be in our binders, but it also can be online. It'll also help other people understand what we've already landmarked if they're interested in landmarking. We've landmarked X because it's such an unusual style of house, like the Gregory House or things like that. So there was a comment somewhere and I didn't.
Tania?
Well, we have this that is a good start from the tour that we did a couple of years ago. So I think adding to this, changing this into the chronological and adding numbers, and then there are not actual addresses to most of these. So, you know, that we've already got a base that we can start from, clean up and add to. And then, yes, it can go into binders for people coming onto the board, but keeping the master document somewhere or online.
Alana?
Mary, I'd be happy to help you do it and produce a living Google document so that it could be downloaded as well as a PDF. And then we can add all of that anywhere.
Right.
And then also, you know, it can be edited by any member of the board who has access to that Google Drive, which would be great.
Took the words right out of my mouth. I think that's an excellent idea, Alana. That would cover it. So I have Mary and Alana, just for my records, working on that task. Anybody else? Gargi?
Yeah, I also wanted to ask, since this is pretty much part and parcel of my job, I know the first thing that I would start with would be those applications. Is there a way we can get some of those applications? Because the historical significance part is something that it keeps coming up whenever I'm working on projects, not necessarily with Westminster. So the first step always is the application. So if we have 25, I'm taking the number that we just rounded off. We have 25 of these. Yes, the tour has those blurbs, but I think the first place we want to start from is the application, because sometimes some of that information, you can find 2-3 different things coming up, and we want those copies of those applications. And I'll be happy to, you know, start with pulling that information, comparing it, and helping you, Mary and Alana, on the group. Can the staff get that for us? Because I'm assuming it's somewhere in the city.
Yeah.
I've just, as a matter of fact, I'm sitting here with my giant binder of resolutions. And that has a lot of the dates when things were actually enacted. That's all right here. And I know I've seen applications. I'm not sure if they're in this particular binder or if I have to go into the dark recesses of City Hall and find them. But I've got that flagged.
Okay. But I think it would be a worthwhile going forward kind of thing. Tennille?
I think it might be useful to come up with a template of the information. So it's like, what is the name? What is the address? The number of it? What is the historical significance? Were they people? Was it the building? So set a template of criteria so that we're following the same format. And then from that, pull the application information. When was it approved? When was it applied for? Is it only certain aspects of the building, again, like the rodeo market, or like the Presbyterian church also, where it's only certain aspects of the building, so that that's all in and following the same format for every property. So it's very easy to find that information.
Yep, I think it's a great idea. Karen, I got all these hands.
There's my hand. And when we have to do a certificate of appropriateness, having the criteria of significance for a particular property at our fingertips is going to make our lives easier.
I agree. Linda?
You can go on the city website of the minutes of board meetings, city hall meetings, councilor meetings, and all that stuff is on there as well. That's where I've seen a lot of the applications, because they have to present that as part of the study.
Yeah, but they don't come up Google search very easily, because I've looked.
Yeah, correct. So that's why I asked about the staff, because I don't know any government entity that doesn't have basements, which are scary, and archive places where you have these old documents. What I'm, Tennille's idea of preparing a template, my experience has been, if we get the applications, the original applications when they got approved as the starting point, we can build a template, because sometimes you otherwise go back and forth because you can't prescribe it before you know what was the criteria used over the years. So we'll build that, but you would need that information also. So it's kind of, I hesitate to ask overworked staff to help pull this together, but it's going to be difficult to do it without having those applications. So,
oh, I'm certainly happy to do that, and that is something that I have flagged here in the minutes that I will be working on that. Yes.
I think that's a great thing, and whether it was old business or new business,
Rich, since I'm asking staff and you to do it, if you really need somebody to go digging down into those and go, here, I have 8 binders. Can you look at it and figure out which ones make sense? I'll help you with it. I just don't know what format they're in.
I appreciate that, and I will certainly let you know if I run into trouble. We'll take a whack at it. I do have one other old business item, Mary, because at the last meeting, I'm not sure who posed the question, but somebody had asked about term limits for boards. And so I just wanted to report back, as I said I would. I did speak to the city clerk's office, and they write that all board members are allowed to serve up to 4 two-year terms on any one board, and that no one is up until 2024. And the 2 that would be up in 2024 are Gargi and Linda. So that's what I have, and I hope that answers your question.
I think it was me, and yes, thank you very much. Karen?
So I would think that I would be up at some point, that I would be term limited out after all of these years.
Oh no, you're not going anywhere.
I'm grandfathered in.
Karen, I don't know. That was just the information I got from the clerk's office. I can double check your number specifically if you'd like me to, but that was not reported when I asked.
Oh, okay. I would love to know, because I asked when they instituted this new system with term limits, if that meant that I would be off. And they said, oh no, you're eligible for another, I forget how many years or terms or whatever. So I just have no idea when that ends.
I'm happy to ask for you, Karen, and I will get back to you.
Okay.
Maybe we should do what the politicians do. You end up serving a term, do your 8 years, go on another board for a couple of years, and then come back. That's what they do.
Oh yeah. I actually started on another board.
Now, I want to, if it's okay, Mary, with your permission, may I just allow our council representative to come online and just say a few words, because she has certainly been here the entire time participating, and that's, I think, what I would like to do, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Councilor Smith, can you hear us?
I can hear, and I'm sorry you can't see me. I don't have an option for a camera, but just wanted to continue to thank you for your service to the city. I know that I say this every time, but I truly mean it. Your work and your dedication to our city and to the residents and providing the history of Westminster is so important. I think it's great, and I'm so excited for this venture between our historical board and the Historical Society. So I think that that's great, and the work that you have all accomplished thus far is wonderful. And this discussion tonight was just so fruitful and dynamic. So I really love that. So thank you again for all of your hard work on not just this board, but for what you do for the city.
Hey, thank you, Councilor Smith. And I agree. What a great discussion we've had tonight. I also wanted to bring your attention to, in the agenda, proposed dates for next year's meeting schedule. Unless anybody has any objections, we have those listed as January 26th, April 27th, July 27th, and October 26th, 7 p.m., our usual time. But those would be our 4 meetings for next year. Does anybody have any concerns or objections to any of those dates? Okay, then I will move forward with making the necessary plans for those, and we'll send out calendar appointments so that we can get those on your calendars. Our login continues to be the same, just to be clear. That's why I don't send you a different login every time. If you've noticed, it's always this. This is our designated code for these meetings, and I hope that it continues in that. It just makes it simple. But I will send those to you as appointments, and that way we'll be squared away for next year.
That sounds good to me. Is there any conference education kind of updates? Will the Saving Places be in February again, Karen? Isn't that when it usually is?
That's usually the very end of January, early February.
Okay, so we might want to keep our eyes out if our next meeting is until the 26th of January. So, okay. I'm going to try to get there again this year.
I'll try to watch for updates from them too.
Okay.
I looked at their website today and they don't have a date up yet. So,
okay. Unless there is anything else.
I do have one more thing. This is Counselor Smith. Looking at the calendar and seeing us not meeting until January, I just wanted to wish everyone a happy holiday, be safe, and be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Then I will declare this meeting adjourned at 8:03 p.m. And I will say the same thing. Everybody have a great Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas.
Christmas,
Hanukkah.
Hanukkah.
Like bar mitzvah, and I knew that was wrong.
All of them.
All of them, yes.
Kwanzaa, New Year, the whole thing. So, do you want to, with respect to the cataloging group, do you want to be in touch with us when you think we might be ready to tackle some paperwork, Rich?
I can send out reminders to everybody just to say, hey, connect with your groups, and here are the members again, just so you all have each other's contact information. But then I'll let you kind of do your thing. You can certainly pull me in at any point if you need to. But really, I want you guys to have the freedom to be creative and knock it out of the park.
Well, yes, except you have the forms at the city, so
You need your binder, Rick.
So we'll need that.
this group's going to need to be. But yeah.
All mine. It's all mine.
So that's what I think, Mary, you were asking, right? Once he has an idea of when, we'll be happy to take it away from you at that point and start to do the work, right? That's the idea.
Well, I am going to do my very best to get this out as soon as I can and not wait too long, because sometimes that happens to us, and I want to give, with the holidays coming up, ample time to schedule those and have those meetings and stay on top of it, because summer really will be here before you know it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Everybody be safe and have a great end of 2021.
Likewise.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.